There's nothing there. It was a whole sleazy encounter. We know all that, but they tried to put him in jail for 136 years. There are 34 felony counts, each of which carries a maximum 4-year sentence. So he has a maximum 4-year sentence of 136 years in jail for a bookkeeping offense. I mean, this is crazy. So I think a number of voters might just say, look, I don't think a lot of Donald Trump. He's not my favorite guy, but he was unfairly targeted.
Welcome to The Debrief, where we talk with the Washington Examiner's top journalists about the headlines they're covering and where the story's going next. I'm Sarah Bedford, and I'm here with Chief Political Correspondent Byron York. Byron, this week in the Trump hush money trial, Stormy Daniels has been on the stand. She gave some very salacious testimony with prosecutors. She is getting cross-examined by defense attorneys right now. What do you think the net effect of her testimony so far has been?
Well, I call it the non-disclosure agreement trial, which is what actually took place in this. You know, the first thing to say is, I'm not a lawyer, but it's impossible to say what effect something is having on a jury. You know, unless jurors just get up and applaud, or they throw fruit at the stand. Unless they do something like that, you just can't tell. I believe that the Trump trial, the Trump defense, has been pretty effective at showing the animus and desire to get Trump with Stormy Daniels. I thought this was kind of an amazing moment. The defense lawyer said, "Do you hate Donald Trump?" And she said, "Yes." That seemed pretty honest. Do you want him to go to jail? Yes. And I think they've shown that she did so much of what she did, everything she did, was for money. But then she's denied that it was for money. Now, I don't get how you do that. And her lawyer, a man named Keith Davidson, her first lawyer, testified earlier, and he specialized in celebrity shakedowns. So I think they've done a pretty good job of showing where she's coming from. Now, the Trump, the prosecution folks will say, well, look, that the case is really about the bookkeeping. Remember, it's about the bookkeeping. It's not about Stormy Daniels. Well, they called her to the stand for some reason, and I think the jury has a pretty low opinion now of how this whole thing got started.
It's a bookkeeping case, as you say, at the heart of it.
Yeah.
But that part of the case seems to be not what prosecutors have focused on so much. They've had a lot of evidence that Trump is a sleazy guy, but evidence that Trump is the one who falsified documents in 2017 when he was president of the United States. Are we seeing that evidence?
Well, this is really in the weeds, but basically what happened was Trump paid Michael Cohen $420,000. Now, remember, Michael Cohen had paid Stormy Daniels $130,000. You think, well, how did it get to be $420,000? And here's what happened. Cohen said, okay, I paid her $130,000 out of my own pocket. Plus, by the way, I earned $50,000 worth of work for you doing something else. That's $180,000. Now, I'm going to have to pay 50% taxes, so you really need to double that, $180,000 to $360,000. And by the way, I'd really like a $60,000 bonus. And that's how they got to $420,000. And so the Trump company agreed to pay Cohen in 12 installments of $35,000 apiece. And the crime here, apparently, is that they labeled those in their bookkeeping, what's called the general ledger. They labeled them legal expenses. Now, you have to remember, a non-disclosure agreement, which is what Cohen had negotiated and crafted with Stormy Daniels' lawyer, an NDA is something that lawyers do.
Right.
So if you pay a lawyer for drafting and reviewing a non-disclosure agreement, that sounds a lot like a legal expense. So you think to yourself, maybe a lot of this stuff was correctly called legal expenses. You can say, well, the $130,000 payoff to Stormy Daniels, that wasn't a legal expense. Okay, fine. But some of this $420,000, it really was legal expenses. And that's at the very, very heart of the case.
And finally, it's hard to predict the effect of all this on the jury, but politically speaking, how do you think this moves voters when they are getting to see how weak the case is?
Well, remember a year ago we were all talking about, wow, what effect are these indictments going to have on Trump's political fortunes? Well, they helped. They helped him win the Republican nomination. Then we were thinking, well, what happens when he's really on trial? When he has to be in a courtroom every day and we're hearing evidence about him, what'll happen then? Well, right now, as we speak, it's week 4, wall-to-wall coverage of this, and we haven't seen any effect in the polls. But then, there are polls, not just one, number of polls, where they ask independents and other voters, Republicans, who say they would be open to voting for Trump. Well, would you be open for voting for Trump if he were convicted of a felony? And the answer is no. So the question is, if he is convicted, will there really be some voters who say, whoop, that's it for me, not going to vote for Donald Trump? Or will, they process the information of this conviction, they'll put it in the context of a race between Trump and Joe Biden, and they'll say, well, obviously it doesn't make me like Trump anymore, but still, I guess I'll vote for him.
Yeah, not all convictions are created equal, right? Do you think that perhaps this conviction of all the ones, and it looks like the only ones Democrats might get, could maybe not be what voters are thinking about when they're answering that question?
Oh, this is easily the conviction that many voters could just think this is all BS. I mean, it just really is. There's nothing there. It was a whole sleazy encounter. We know all that, but they tried to put him in jail for 136 years. There are 34 felony counts, each of which carries a maximum 4-year sentence. So he has a maximum 4-year sentence of 136 years in jail for a bookkeeping offense. I mean, this is crazy. So I think a number of voters might just say, look, I don't think a lot of Donald Trump. He's not my favorite guy, but he was unfairly targeted in this. And as you suggested, I'm not going to make that the reason I decide to vote for him or not vote for him. I'm going to decide on other reasons like the economy or foreign policy or whatever is important to me, but I'm not going to make the trial the deciding factor.
Well, Byron, thank you so much for being here today.
Good to be here.
You can get more reporting from Byron by signing up for his newsletter, Byron York's Daily Memo, at washingtonexaminer.com.